Hey everybody, it's me, Zach, and welcome back to my channel. Hi, hello everybody, how are you all doing today? Today we are taking a little history lesson class situation type of deal in the Quirkyloverosee history of excusing transphobia. And in case it's not clear or obvious, today we are going to be discussing topics of both transphobia and homophobia. So if you're new here, it might be helpful to know that I'm a queer non-binary person, and I care deeply about the LGBT community and advocating for us. If you don't support trans people or LGBTQ people at large, this is not a safe space for you. So save yourself the time or breath of arguing with me about any issues related to trans people or the things that I have to say in support of trans people in the comments down below. Or do it anyways if you really want to give me the engagement. Sure, why not? Also, if you're not familiar with QLR, Quirkyloverosee, Rosie Lynn Reed herself at this point, it might be helpful to go back and look at some previous videos that I've made about her. I'm going to compile a playlist for you so that you can just easily go watch all of them should you want to, but I do think it would be helpful in terms of giving you context about who Rosie is as a person and why I in particular have a connection with her. I think it'd be a little bit redundant to go into all of that all over again, and not all of that is applicable to what we're going to talk about today. So I'll give you a very quick condensed overview about who Rosie is. Things you need to know about her is that she would really like to be a lolcow real bad. She seeks the attention of creators who do content about lolcows like me, and she had a really weirdly parasocial relationship with me that was one-sided on her part. And mostly she's a train wreck who cooks weird things in live streams and eats it all on camera, but doesn't do mukbangs, y'all. It might also be helpful to know that in somewhat recent history, Rosie made some claims about me not being the moral person that I claim to be, and that I co-opted things from my ex, and that my ex was the person that really cared about a lot of issues, and that I just cared about them because I was in a relationship with him.
I still have been buying into his moralistic approach. Am I wrong for that? In what way have you seen that leave since the breakup? I think it's more transparent through the Twitches, like the Twitch stuff. Because you have a lot more control with pre-recorded YouTube content. I think that as time has gone on, he's just gotten more comfortable with why, Amanda? I can talk about what I want. What was I saying? What was your question? I just think that while it hasn't gone away completely, it's something that he doesn't have as much of a focus on. Even the boycotting and all that stuff, he started kind of coming across being less about it after post breakup. And I think that his ex actually held a lot of these views that I think he just co-opted.
And because of that, we're always going to take an opportunity to talk about the ways that Rosie really advocates for the things that she really cares about. Because she claims that my moral beliefs are not what they seem. I'm curious about what Rosie's moral beliefs are. In particular, Rosie's been quick to say that she doesn't fuck with transphobia.
I have to really hone that in because I'm very much against transphobia. Because I don't fuck with transphobia. Again, I don't fuck with transphobia. I don't fuck with transphobia, period. That's my stance. I don't fuck with transphobia. That's our response. As I said, I don't fuck with transphobia. That's my bottom line. That's not who I am. I have been and always will be strongly against transphobia. I do have strong viewpoints on transphobia, fat phobia, all the phobias, all the isms, that's always been my stance. I don't and I'm not saying anyone is being transphobic. I just don't tolerate it. That's a zero tolerance policy around here, around these parts.
Yes, Rosie Lynn Reed, the fierce ally of trans rights. She sticks up for trans people whenever possible and absolutely never makes excuses for people when they're transphobic. I'm sure. As a place to get started, the most recent situation where transphobia has come up on Rosie's channel is in regards to her newfound bestie, Amberlynn Reed. Now, I'm really not trying to be an Amberlynn Reed content channel in any kind of way, but I do think this particular thing that happened with Amberlynn in regards to Rosie and her channel should be discussed. So what you need to know is that recently Amberlynn was accused of being transphobic and or making transphobic comments about her ex, Casey. A brief shout out to Rachel, who covered this in a video on her YouTube channel. I'll leave a link to it down below if you want the full context of everything she talked about. I really don't watch Amberlynn Reed content like that, and I'm really only aware that Amberlynn did most of this stuff because of people from my Twitch stream and or Rosie herself talking about it in a live stream, okay? So based on what I've pieced together from both Rachel's video and doing a little bit of a skim of Amberlynn's actual live streams, is that Amberlynn was in a private Discord for the LolCow Live community. If you're not familiar with LolCow Live, it's like a really bad podcast where they have a bunch of lolcows participate in it. I don't know, that's like the best way I can explain it without going super in depth. So there's one LolCow Live show called Tech Talk, and there's a woman on this show called Sweet Tea. And I guess Sweet Tea told some kind of story about, and sorry for being graphic here, but this is the conversation, okay? But she told some kind of story about getting fingered by a man who had his dick chopped off or something. I don't really know the full story, nor do I care to look into details about it. So Amberlynn was talking in the LolCow Live Discord about how she had a lot in common with Sweet Tea. And unprompted, in this Discord, she said that she too had been fingered by a dickless man. These messages were, of course, then shared outside of that Discord, and the people that found it outside of that Discord started making assumptions and believed that these comments, or this particular comment, was a transphobic joke about her ex, Casey, who is a trans man. Amberlynn went on to address these concerns in 2 different live streams. To be quite honest, I don't fully know that I understand her defense whatsoever. And I think that she probably would have been better served to just say, hey, I made a tasteless joke, I'm sorry. But instead, she tried to defend it. She claimed that she was making some kind of pun and it was a joke. But typically, even the worst dad jokes, which are all puns, or at least like you can kind of get the humor. I have no idea what was supposed to be humorous about this, even if it wasn't transphobic. She also said she never actually was fingered by a dickless man, which makes no sense to me. Then why would you say that? And she later, at one point in the live stream, goes on to say, I'm not transphobic at all. People just like to reach. It was about an actual man who is a man.
And I was making a joke and I said, me and Sweet Tea have a lot of things in common. I was also fingered by a dickless man. It was supposed to be a pun, a joke. It was supposed to be funny. It was nothing, because that's never happened to me. So there was nothing transphobic about that. God, people are so dumb. Like, I'm not transphobic at all. People just like to reach. It was about an actual man who is a man. He just had his penis cut off in a tragic accident years ago, probably like a decade ago plus. It was just literally a joke.
I do think I might have misunderstood a little bit about what was happening here. I think now that I'm editing things together, it seems like she's referring to the guy in Sweet Tea's original story. But either way, referring to this man as an actual man and saying that because he's an actual man, it can't be transphobic is in it of itself transphobic. So I do just want to say real quick, if you're a trans ally and you defend trans people and you care about trans people, then you believe trans men are men, period, end of story. There's nothing more to it. So yeah, I definitely take concern at a minimum with that specific statement from her. Now I should note that this is not the first time that Amberlynn has ever been accused of being transphobic or has had her actions and behaviors and words critiqued for being transphobic. And I think that's also important to note when we get to talking about Miss Rosie Lynn Reed, because Rosie is very knowledgeable about Amberlynn, okay? Like, Rosie knows everything there is to know about Amberlynn. She used to write recaps on Reddit about Amberlynn, okay? So, like, homegirl knows Amberlynn's history. She is not new to this. She is true to this. So just some brief examples of ways that Amberlynn has been critiqued in the past for being transphobic. When I first started covering her, she would dead name Casey all the time, and on purpose. People would, like, correct her, and she would say, well, I knew Casey as blah, 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 and continued to use Casey's dead name. She's also faced a lot of criticism over time for saying she'd never date a trans person and saying really weird comments about their genitals. And I do just want to say, not to give Amberlynn the benefit of the doubt, but I do just want to say, in case people are listening and they don't know a lot about trans people and they don't know a lot of ways to be an ally, that transphobia can look like many different things, okay? And I believe that there are people who do transphobic things unintentionally who don't actually want to hurt trans people, but they just don't know. They're uneducated. They're ignorant to it. They just have no concept for what solidarity and allyship to trans people looks like. All of that to say that, like, I do think people can learn and grow and be better people and better allies of trans people over time. So with that being said, I think Amberlynn's jokes were tasteless. I think she tried to run things back and not be honest about it, about what her true intentions or meaning from it was. And again, I think she would have been better off just apologizing for making a really bad joke and suggesting that she might try to do better in the future. But knowing her track record, I don't see that happening. But anyways, this video isn't about Amberlynn or her alleged transphobia, but it is about the ways that Rosie showed up to defend Amberlynn Reed's alleged transphobia. So in that first live stream where Amberlynn was defending herself and proclaiming that she wasn't transphobic and this, that, the other, resident Amberlynn ass licker Rosie Lynn Reed was present and already looking for ways to excuse Amberlynn's behavior. She started with one comment in the chat that said, "Thanks for explaining, I was nervous, LOL." And she followed that up with, "They will always find a way to make what you did into something malicious. If someone else made that joke, it would be a non-issue." It is very interesting to me that Rosie sees jokes about trans people and their genitals as non-issues, and that she just immediately accepts Amberlynn's very unclear explanation of what happened. But no worries, everybody. Rosie's chat is going to attempt to help Rosie see how maybe she shouldn't be defending Amberlynn's behavior. And Rosie starts repeating stuff that kind of sounds similar to the stuff that Amberlynn was saying. She goes on to say that the comment wasn't about Casey, it was about a man who didn't identify as trans.
Well, the way that she explained it, like, unless I heard it in a other context, so what she said happened was that it wasn't about Casey, it was about a man, someone who didn't identify as trans.
Which, like, if you heard Amberlynn say that, you already saw the clip in this video. She was saying it was an actual man. So, like, the fact that Rosie is acknowledging she heard that statement and doesn't have a problem with the way that Amberlynn worded that is wild. And then Rosie pulled a pretty classic Rosie move once people started, like, putting some pressure on her and started to just try to, like, play dumb and act like she didn't know what the original comment was or what was really said or what happened.
But I thought it made sense that she wasn't being transphobic. I didn't hear the original clip, so I was just going off of what she said. Like, we don't have like the recording of what was said, right? So based on the context of everything, because, like, again, I never made my tea drink. I just started spilling tea. Yeah, I don't think so either, Carrie. So I don't know, that's why, like, I'm not responsible for what she says. I don't fuck with transphobia, period. That's my stance.
We saw her do that with Shani when Shani for Christ was in her chat. She acted like she didn't know anything about Shani, even though in my last video about Rosie, I proved that wasn't true, that she actually knew a lot about Shani. And then eventually, Rosie just settled on, well, I'm not responsible for Amberlynn. I don't fuck with transphobia. I can't be responsible for what she does. The topic gets dropped briefly until somebody brings it up a little bit later in the stream and she gets agitated that it's being brought up again.
Yeah, and I've addressed what I want to say, you. I will say let's go ahead and like drop it though, because especially if it's making my mods uncomfortable, I'm not cool with that. Like I said, she explained it, and I don't fuck with transphobia. That's my response. All I said in the chat was I was glad she clarified. So.
I find it interesting that she tries to say that it's the mods that are getting irritated by the conversation or that the conversation is making them uncomfortable in some kind of way, when you can clearly tell that it's Rosie who's agitated by the conversation. Rosie's upset probably because the conversation's not about her, it's about Amberlynn. She also tries to say that the only thing she said in Amberlynn's chat was that she was glad that Amberlynn clarified what happened. But we also know that's not true because Rosie actually said that this joke would be a non-issue if anybody else said it. So I don't know why she's acting like she only said one thing in the chat when she absolutely said more than that. But yeah, she continues to get frustrated that people aren't dropping it, and so she starts asking the mods to time out anybody who tries to talk about it.
Alright, if they continue talking about it after I've already addressed it twice, you can temporarily time them out. Don't permanently block them. That's it. I want the topic dropped, so. I was expecting it would already be dropped by the time I came back. I addressed it, I said what I said. I'm not responsible for other people's actions, guys. So, moving on.
And while I do agree that Rosie isn't necessarily responsible for the things that Amberlynn says or does on the internet, I do think that somebody who says that they don't fuck with transphobia certainly shouldn't be defending somebody who clearly doesn't have any care for being a little bit transphobic here and there. Like, after watching these clips, it's really no wonder to me that Rosie sits on a chair in her kitchen for hours on end because she doesn't have a backbone to actually stand up for anything.
Clock that, T.
Rosie is the kind of person who would never actually defend her beliefs, values, or morals if it came at the expense of some internet clout that might help her to never have to apply to a real job again.
Clock that, T.
Unfortunately for Rosie, her brief censorship of all topics related to Amberlynn's transphobia in that live stream didn't stop people from bringing it up in a future live stream. In her next live stream, a user named Seekgrass, who I'm kind of inferring was previously named Yukemeat. It seems like maybe they changed their name because Rosie was very clearly responding to them but calling them Yukemeat. But everything in the chat now says that this person's name is Seekgrass. So if that seems confusing, it confused me as well. But that's where I've landed. But a person named Seekgrass said, "Hi Rosie, I've been a long time silent viewer. In your last stream, I spoke up about my concerns over Amber's trans comment because I saw that you were in her chat supporting her. I'm a trans man, by the way." They then went on to say, "When I brought it up, members in your chat told me to get over it, and I was timed out by your mods so that I couldn't speak." And then Rosie gave a very long response to that.
Yeah, I remember that. That's why, and I understand your concerns about that. The reason that, hold on. As I said, I don't fuck with transphobia. That's my bottom line. It wasn't that, I don't think that's something that, first of all, you're a trans person, I'm not gonna tell you how to feel about that situation. That's not my place. The thing that was about was that when I addressed it a couple of times, you kept bringing it up and the topic wasn't being dropped because, again, I'm not responsible for something someone else does. I don't think that's what she intended for it to mean, but I don't think that intention necessarily changes the impact of that statement. I thought her clarification was that it wasn't about that topic, and she had told me privately that her and Casey hadn't even done that or whatever prior to her telling you guys that publicly. So I believed that. I didn't like the comment. I didn't think it was a good joke. I didn't think it was a funny thing to say. I didn't think it should have been said at all. That's my opinion of that. I would hope that she had no intention of being transphobic. I think that, you know, if you guys... I don't watch LOL Cow stuff because that's the kind of humor they get into over there. So that's... And they say messed up stuff for the sake of messed up stuff. That's just not my vibe. You know? And so... Again, like I said, I'm not interested in trying to defend her actions. Like, she's an adult. She should have to defend that. So, at this point, I do want the topic dropped. I really do. Because it's not something that I think I should have to defend.
You might notice that Rosie has pivoted her position on this a little bit since the last live stream. Because now she seems to be saying, well, yeah, I don't like that she said it, but I shouldn't have to defend it. Which was not something she said in the last stream. So, like, if you didn't like that she said it, you could have said that the first time it was brought up on your stream. But that also doesn't really reflect what you said in her chat when she was defending herself. And I just want to read your words to you again, Rosie. This joke would be a non-issue if someone else said it. That doesn't sound like somebody that has an issue with what she said. It sounds like you don't think that joke was a problem at all. But also, I'm really gonna need you to define what it means when you say that you don't fuck with transphobia. You don't fuck with transphobia, but you won't hold your friend accountable for a tasteless transphobic joke.
Clock that, T.
You don't fuck with transphobia, but you wouldn't just initially come out and say the joke was in bad taste.
Clock that, T.
Later in the stream, Rosie starts having a pity party because she doesn't understand why she's being held accountable for Amberlynn's actions.
I'm okay, Abby. I just feel like I can't do anything. So I feel like people aren't hearing what I'm saying.
And then some drama ensues because Rosie's mod, Christine, starts deleting some comments from Britt, who is a real-life friend of Rosie's, or at least was at one point. By the end of this stream, she gets blocked, so when you go back and watch this stream, you can't see anything that Britt was saying in the chat. But apparently, allegedly, at some point they were real-life friends outside of the internet. Christine deleted some of Britt's comments, and Rosie starts contemplating ending the live stream over all of it.
Yeah, Christine, I'll be honest, I wish you hadn't have deleted those. Yeah, I wish that hadn't happened, to be honest. That was... yeah. I'm debating if I should just end the stream, to be honest with you.
The deleted comments in question were about Amberlynn's transphobia, and I know this because later in the chat, Christine actually apologizes, which honestly, I don't think Christine needed to apologize for deleting those comments, because Rosie was giving a lot of mixed messages about if it was even okay to talk about in chat. But Rosie said that she felt like people should be able to share things, share their feelings about that topic.
I was purposefully not deleting people's stuff on those topics because I do think they should be able to say how they feel.
And of course, Seek Grass, who was in her chat and who initially brought it up in this particular live stream, had something to say about that. They said, by the way, I said how I felt last stream and you asked your mods to hide me, so that contradicts what you literally just said. Bye. Rosie eventually brings it back to her being the victim in this situation for being held responsible for somebody else's actions.
I just don't understand why I'm being held responsible for someone else's actions. That's crazy to me. Especially when I said I don't agree with things and that I told her how I felt privately. I don't understand why I need to be held to the fire for that. I'm confused.
Perhaps the problem here, Rosie, is that your messaging about this situation has changed pretty much every time you've talked about it. You went from saying it was a non-issue in Amberlynn's actual live stream to then saying that you felt like she did a good job of clarifying it and that you didn't think she intended to be transphobic. And now, only after having your feet held to the fire, are you saying that you don't agree with the things that she said. But Rosie continues to reiterate that she doesn't understand what's happening, and she feels like she's made her stance very clear. And perhaps if I didn't make my personal point yet, consider this message from one of her mods named The Last Nashi. The Last Nashi said, "It's not that you're responsible for her, because you're definitely not. It's just that normally, you would stop associating with someone like that / expect others to stop associating, and people might be confused." I don't really feel like that resonated with Miss Rosie, and eventually she does just end the live stream because there's just too much drama! Rosie also did an additional stream about 4 hours after this one ended. She starts this live stream off by letting us know that her story has once again changed. And she says that one of the reasons that she didn't say anything at the beginning is because she didn't want to add to the dogpiling of Amberlynn Reid.
There's been comments that she has made that I just did not want to add to the dogpiling of, and I did not want to add to the discourse on, and I did not want to publicly, I don't even know what the word is, I guess publicly decimate for her, and I wanted to be able to talk to her privately about these things and handle it that route, and I felt that I was handling it in a way where I was being more neutral, and I was being more I guess just trying to be understanding that maybe she didn't intend it in the way that it was being taken, but regardless, the impact is the impact, right?
Apparently now she says she's gonna distance herself from Amberlynn, or at least distance herself from talking about Amberlynn, and not going in her chat and talking about Amberlynn on her live stream, but might still talk to Amberlynn offline. And when Rosie talks about coming to the revelation that she needed to come back and apologize to her chat, she talks about one of her moderators who took the time to talk to her about why people were upset. And the moderator in question is a trans man, and talk about how he helped her come to this conclusion.
I've decided that I need to distance myself from her and her content because I have a mod here. I'm not going to name them. Some of you may know who I'm talking about, but I have a mod who has been a part of my community for a while. Who did say I could talk about this, and who did say I got their permission. I had a good long conversation with him. He is a trans man, and he's someone that I know knows me, at least on a parasocial level, and who I know values me as a creator, as a person, and my community.
I think it's great that this moderator did the emotional labor and work of helping Rosie understand why people might be upset with her about her comments defending Amberlynn Reid. Just to be clear, oftentimes marginalized people are put on the spot for doing the educating. And to be honest with you, I'm not even sure Rosie really needed this education. I don't even think Rosie really needed this person to come tell her this. She's fairly well versed in issues of trans people, and she later goes on to essentially state that she knows that she probably should have never been okay with it to begin with. I also want to note though that Seek Grass, the person I referenced earlier in this video, also identified as a trans man, and Seek Grass's opinion didn't seem to hold as much weight as the moderators. I do understand though, perhaps it hits differently when it's somebody you're personally closer to. Rosie does a very common thing that people do when they are put under pressure in terms of owning up to ways that they harmed marginalized communities. And Rosie starts weaponizing her emotions, her feelings. She talks about having to stop herself from crying because all of this is just so emotionally draining for her.
And I'm really trying to hold back my emotions. I don't want to cry. So I also apologize for that. This is a very emotionally charged thing for me.
Despite the fact that Rosie's the one that potentially harmed people in her community, made people feel uncomfortable in her community, made people frustrated in her community, that she was defending Amberlynn being transphobic. Rosie's story about it all also shifts over the time of this apology. What started out as something that she said she didn't want to dogpile on Amberlynn for, then turned into needing a whole entire education from this person in her community on why what she did was wrong, to then, now, allegedly, the real reason that Rosie didn't speak out about it is because, you guys, she was scared.
But at the end of the day, I did not just come out right and say that I didn't agree with those comments when I didn't. That I didn't think they were okay, because they weren't. Because I was scared. I was scared of conflict. I was scared of what could happen. And that's on me. That is solely my responsibility and no one else's. That is not Amber's fault. That is not y'all's fault. That's my fault. And I'm sorry for that.
Rosie Lynn Reed, you literally used to write recaps about Amberlynn Reed on the internet on a regular basis, and now all of a sudden you're too scared? You're too scared to confront Amberlynn Reed for the fucked up shit she says and does? I'm gonna need you to stand up. Give that towel on that chair some breathing room and stand up. Stand for literally anything.
Clock that, T.
Like, you've got to stand for something or you fall for anything. I think that's like the old saying, right? Like, give that towel some room to breathe and get up off that chair and stand for something, Rosie. And then she starts saying that she shouldn't have tried to justify it from the beginning and that she never intended to defend Amber. She also apologized because she said she didn't realize that publicly being friends with somebody would mean that she'd have to comment on their behavior.
I never meant, or I guess here we go with the word intent. I never intended to defend Amber, but I think especially in the beginning, that's kind of what I was inadvertently doing. I didn't want the conflict, and I didn't want to add to the discourse. And I guess I just didn't make the connection that me being publicly in her chat and publicly involved with her meant that people would expect me to publicly commentate on everything that happens.
And that really fucking misses the point, Rosie. First of all, it suggests that people asked you to speak about Amberlynn and the transphobic comment. And you're trying to pass blame to your audience for that when you were the one that responded to the comments in the first place in Amberlynn's live stream. People were asking about the comments that you made in her live stream. Nobody was putting a gun to your head in that live stream and saying, you better talk about this. You chose to speak up in Amberlynn's chat. So then when people from your community saw that you did that, they asked you about it in your live stream. But then really it all goes back to what the last Nashi said. This is really more about your inconsistencies when it comes to associating with people who participate in transphobia or other kind of phobias. The issue people seem to have is that you're continuing to associate with Amberlynn despite her behavior. Even in this apology, you go on to talk about the ways that y'all get along and talk offline, in the DMs and things like that. Based on this apology, it doesn't sound like you have any plans to stop talking to Amberlynn, and that's what's so confusing to me, because that's the part that you don't seem to be getting. So yeah, I guess she kind of apologized for it, but she's not even necessarily going to stop communication with Amberlynn, so does it really matter? Now, I think I've made it clear that I know why Rosie would defend Amberlynn Reed over transphobia. She's spineless and she desperately wants that clout from Girl World. But could you believe if I told you that once upon a time, she also didn't stop associating with a man who made transphobic and homophobic comments in her chat? Well, I'm sure you could believe that. I'm sure at this point you could absolutely believe that. So almost a year ago, Rosie was entertaining a man in her chat named David. She would flirt with him publicly and apparently was also flirting with him behind the scenes and DMs, and they even had plans to meet up in real life. David would actively chat in her live streams and make other chatters feel uncomfortable. And Rosie, who would probably excuse murder if it meant getting a man's attention,
Clock that tea.
would make excuses for him and brush it all off. I'll show you some clips with examples of that, but also just note that you can't see his messages because she ended up blocking him, which means that you can't see his messages in any of her chats and any of her live streams ever.
Hey, Joanne. He's not attacking you. He's just trying to make some jokes. I'm sorry if they're not. He was trying to make a joke. It may have not translated. Because he was trying to make a play on words. He was trying to joke with you. I'm sorry it didn't land. He's not trying to offend you. I'm sorry. You don't need to leave. You're welcome here. David, go nicer on her. Oh. He has a very... Yeah, anyway. I hope you're still here. David, don't be running people off. So a bedpost is just like a bed frame, right, guys? Like a bedpost is just like a part of a bed frame. He was just doing a play on words, is my understanding. It was not meant to be an insult. Anywho. Let me think. Yep. Okay, yay, we're all good. Gotcha, we're all good now. Joanne just didn't understand. I've been saying Karen because I didn't know how to pronounce it. Karen. To be fair, I was calling you Karen. So, David, stop. Don't say people's names wrong on purpose, please. Your mom calls you Karen. It's just spelled with an E. Oh, okay. Oh.
You might be thinking, those comments weren't that bad. Maybe a little weird. Maybe a little weird that she didn't care that this man was being kind of rude and making other people feel uncomfortable, but nothing inherently problematic. And that's when I get to introduce to you that you should not be surprised that she also looked past him being transphobic and homophobic.
Are you sure it's a guy? Could identify as an Apache attack chopper, what? I'm gonna definitely pack this nightgown. Oh yeah, David, that's true, Vicky. Yeah, that is actually a go-to insult. Which, no bueno. So when like transphobes want to insult people who say like they identify as a woman when they're trans, they'll say like they identify as a helicopter. It's like a go-to insult. I know you don't live on the internet. You live on a farm, but I know you didn't mean anything by it. Brokeback Mountain. I've actually never seen that. I've wanted to. But I don't know if that's a good first movie pick there, David. Let's see. Okay. David! Stop.
Now, a reasonable person would be like, that's it. That's where I'm going to draw the line. Like, I don't want to date somebody who's transphobic. I mean, Rosie doesn't fuck with transphobia. But unfortunately, I can't tell you that transphobia or homophobia were why she left this man. She left this man because she found out that she was being catfished by him. Not because he shared like a picture that didn't actually reflect what he looked like, but because he'd been telling her that he was a farmer, and it turns out he was not a farmer. And he lived with his mom and doesn't make music, which seemed to be really important to her, among some other things.
Farmer David's not a farmer. Let's start there. Farmer David lives with his mama. Let's start there.
Oh my God, you went in so hard. You just went in so hard.
The girls got together last night in the Discord. We know David's and his mama's name. We know his brother's name. We know his sister's name. We know everything. We haven't done anything with it, and we're not going to do anything with it unless he fucks with me first.
I want to point out something, okay? Well, yes, he may live with his mama. We don't care about things like that.
Right,
so
but you lied about it.
There. And yeah, his mama don't even live on a farm.
Yeah, they don't even live on a farm. They live in like a suburban house. Someone may or may not have gotten a Google Maps image of it. I don't know.
He was in fact looking to meet
in a week, in less than a week, on Saturday. We were supposed to meet in person on Saturday. So he didn't lie about his name. He didn't lie about his age. I don't think he lied about parts of his backstory, but he lied about being a farmer. He lied about being able to make music, which is how we caught him. because he's an idiot.
So he lied about where he lived. He lied about the farm. He lied about the cows on the farm.
Yeah, he sent me
lied
like fake pictures of cows that we
So basically,
he told me privately that he only occasionally like would drink alcohol or whatever, but when someone in my Discord shared about their sobriety date, he suddenly was 8 years sober. Someone shared about a medical condition in the Discord, and suddenly he was like he had a family member or something. Suddenly he had a story about that was like a one-upping, like grandiose kind of shit. He lied about his whole entire life.
She did a whole live stream with her friend Chris, who I think has some relation to the Brit that I previously talked about in this video. So they explain a lot of this in that live stream that they do, and eventually, like an hour into the live stream, somebody named Silly Goofy Stuff finally brings up that David was transphobic and homophobic.
So yeah, I actually would like to apologize for that, Silly Goofy Stuff. I chose to believe that that was something that was unintentional. So I'm not going to block you, and I'm going to say I'm sorry, because I should know better. And there's no excuses for that, so I'm sorry.
She goes on to talk about how she thought this was an innocent joke, and how she talked to him privately about it.
He said something, and I thought it was an innocent joke, like a misunderstanding by the way that he reacted, and I fucked up. I did talk to him about it behind the scenes.
yes, we did. Yeah,
I did. And I explained some stuff to him, and he went along with that in the sense of, like, not only not happening again, but apologizing. So
basically saying that he didn't understand what he was saying.
Yeah, Shawnee.
Yeah,
Shawnee.
So Silly, I'm not blocking you if you want to continue this conversation. I'm just going to apologize because I don't. It's fucked up.
Anything about that sound familiar to how she handled the Amberlynn situation? But yeah, I mean, I appreciate that she apologized for messing up in that situation. That feels at least somewhat self-aware, which is not what she did in the Amberlynn situation. But it's also interesting to me that she only made that apology and only addressed these things that this guy said once the guy was definitely not in the picture anymore. Rosie really said, I can excuse transphobia, but I draw the line at living with your mom not on a farm. I do want to say that there was one moment where Rosie did, in fact, act quickly on somebody that was being transphobic. She had a moderator in her community named JB, and JB was reacting to and liking stuff, I think, on Twitter that was transphobic, and people alerted Rosie to it. And she put that to a stop with a quickness. So I guess since JB probably didn't have any clout to offer her or potentially sex to offer her, she really didn't care. She said, yeah, I'll put a stop to transphobia because I ain't gonna get clout or sex from you.
Clock that, T.
It would be great to see Rosie stand on business when it comes to being a trans ally because honestly, trans people need all the allies we can get at this time. But perhaps that's too much to ask from a woman who at most could only roll around a chair in her kitchen on business.
Clock that, T.
The bottom line for Rosie is Rosie. And Rosie's gonna put her interests, whether that's food, clout, or sex, over the interests of anything she claims that she cares about. We saw that with Shani in her chat in my last video. We saw that when allegations came out about the guy she was dating being a predator. And now you see it with 2 examples of her excusing transphobia. I don't really expect Rosie to change, so I'm just educating the masses about her. I just really want to share. Anyways, that's all I have time for today. Let me know your thoughts down below. I hope you all enjoyed today's video. If you did and you're brand new here, consider subscribing. Hit the bell button so you get a notification every single time I post a new video. Make sure to leave me a comment, hit like, click share, and follow me on all my social media. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!